I'm a Dutch guy, born and raised in Amsterdam. And just before we built this presentation, we figured out that Wi-Fi is built and created by a Dutch guy, which was a big surprise to me, being in this space for at least 3 years. So it is like 10, 20 years ago, Wi-Fi got invented, 802.11, a big technology that we all use nowadays when we wake up, when we go to bed. Matt talked about it during the Connected Home. It's a big part of what we do, and it's a technology that is universally adopted to deliver connectivity. But it's still a treasure hunt. It's still something that we hunt for when we go to the Starbucks. It's still something that we get annoyed by when we check into our hotel room. $20 to get online. When we go into an airplane, $25 to get online. It's ridiculous. And it's frustrating at the same time. So when I traveled from Amsterdam to New York and to San Francisco with my co-founders, we thought, this is impossible. Right? We're in 2014. It needs to be simpler. It needs to work. And it's not something that we should hunt for. It should be something that travels with us. So I want to tell you a little bit about the last 2-3 years of being a startup in New York, in the hardware space, and probably in the most boring industry ever, the telco industry. Because this is what we have to work with. Mobile hotspots that look terrible. Really terrible. The top device, believe it or not, released 2 months ago by Sprint with a projector inside, a music player, an MP3 player, and a display. Like, who uses those things? You can read your Google Docs. I think there's like a Google Drive icon on the mobile hotspot. Again, like, who uses these things? So when we went to the drawing board 2 years ago when we joined Techstars, the current MD, David Tisch, or the previous MD, asked us, like, why are you guys the ones that will be successful in building this product? And I think in contrast to what we've just heard, we had no knowledge whatsoever of both the telco industry, and we never, ever, ever touched hardware. But we're the consumer, and we know what we want, and we know what we don't want. I don't want to have a mobile hotspot with displays and projectors and Google Docs on it, because no one will ever use them. So this is what we built. It's a simple box. It has nothing on it. Just a logo and one button. And that's what we try to do. So we try to put the control, we try to put connectivity literally in your hands, and internally we call it Wi-Fi in your pants. That's what we want to do. A super, super simple product that delivers one promise, connectivity. That's it. And the hardest thing about building hardware, in our case, is trying to make the simple things really simple. So these are a few shots of the new product that we announced a few weeks ago. Super simple. We have one, like, top right corner, one on and off button. That's the only thing on the screen. My co-founder, Stefan, my CTO, he's colorblind. In our first product, and this really happened, in our first product we had these light indicators. Green is great, orange is less great, and red is unusable. For him, everything was unusable. He had no clue. So we spent about a year discussing and debating whether that's a problem for more people. He agreed it is. We both agreed it was. So we made this new design where connectivity is showed by displaying rings. 3 rings, really awesome. 1 ring, not so awesome. Simpler, easier to understand, and almost like everyone would be able to understand it. The same goes for the bottom right, our USB connector. I think one of my biggest frustrations, even with this new design, USB is an annoying technology. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I never get that thing to fit right in one turn. It's just like your keys, you always get the wrong key or turn it the wrong way. In our first product, we had this little flap that was like a cover of the USB port. In our announcement blog post, we apologized for all the fingernails that we broke. It's a terrible decision that we made, but it worked, but we improved it. So the physical design is really similar to the first product, but it's just a little bit better. We took away all the frustration with lights, frustration with USB connectors, just by making it simpler. And I think we heard Matt talk a little bit about doing hardware and doing service. We're a mobile provider, but we're also an internet provider, and it also means that we have subscription models. And subscription models are a necessary evil, and most carriers think about a service of something that you use every month, something that you pay for every month. And the carriers, they thrive by selling you a piece of plastic, attaching a 2-year contract to it, and hope that you never, ever, ever use their product, because that would be terrible. So if you don't use it a lot, you're overpaying. And if you use it a lot, then you're paying a lot. So that entire model is built and generated for these bigger companies to generate more revenue. And for the consumer, there is no choice. So we made a model, a service component next to our hardware that I think is as close to being honest to our customers. You only pay for what you use, and that's it. No monthly fees, no subscriptions, nothing. No contracts. It's similar with your car. We don't take away something that you just put in. So if you buy data, it's always there. Imagine if someone would walk up to your car, drain all the gas that you just poured in, because you didn't use it. That's what the bigger telcos do. So that's a little bit about our product. A tiny box of big internet. And like a few tips that we experienced, and one of my favorite quotes from a close friend of ours, Werner, VP and CTO of Amazon: everything fails all the time. And we have a few tips and some things that I like to share with everyone that is thinking of building a startup, thinking of running a hardware startup, that might help you not make the same mistakes that we did. So think about things that fail. Software is a really, really big part of hardware nowadays. We looked at Nest, we looked at Fitbit, we looked at many other companies that do create hardware, but the service and the software is actually something that people deal with like once, twice, 20 times a day. I read in an article that people check their mobile phones like 320 times a day. That's a lot of interactions with your software, while the hardware is just somewhere stored away, in our case, in your pants or in the backpack. So we decided to build everything ourselves. And this is something that my co-founder, again, he's super, super stressed about this. We build all our software ourselves. We use some ODMs and OEMs in Asia to manufacture what we do. We get help with the industrial design. But every little thing, every interaction that you have with the Karma brand is built by one of our team members. If you go to our store, it's built by Karma, not by another plugin, not by a different store. Because I think that the experience that we're putting into people's pants is something that starts with the checkout process. So we get a lot of, if I go to these MVNO summits, and MVNO is a company that resells data from the bigger carriers, basically what we do. I only get business cards from people that's selling us like business analytic trackings, data usage, billing, all these amazing systems. We can build up stores to build the entire world, to serve the entire world, but we say no to everything because we want to build it. So if you do something, if you go into hardware, make sure you have a software team on board as well. Make sure that you have full control over what you're doing. You don't want to be tied down to a 2-year contract, even with your software supplier. Another thing, if you do integrations, and we do a ton of integrations with carriers, with fulfillment partners, keep them super, super thin. Make sure that if something happens to those partners, one of our partners, the guys that both connected us to the network, I see Marlene from Shapeways, she's laughing because she knows the story. Her co-founder is now part of the Karma team. I think 5, 6, 7 months ago, on Wednesday morning, we got a really interesting email from a competitor actually that said, "Hey, Steve and Robert, do you know that the guys that like ship your devices and activate it to the network just filed Chapter 11? We're like, what? Sorry, what happened? Our most important partner, oh, I think it's okay, just went out of business. No heads up, nothing. So of course, with a big, big panic, Robert canceled his holiday. I'm still grateful for that. But because everything fails all the time, we were prepared. So we had a backup plan. We knew what to do. We stopped shipping for like 1 or 2 days. We had some boxes at the office, so we start shipping ourselves. We found a new partner, integrated with them, took us like 1 or 2 weeks, and we were up and running again. 0 downtime. None of our customers ever experienced the biggest failure that we experience. Our network and fulfillment partner, pretty basic essentials if you're shipping and connecting people to the internet, just vanished. So make sure that if you do anything that you set up, any partnership that you have, make sure that you have a plan B and preferably a plan C. If things fail, make sure that no one knows about it. And I'll tell you like a few months later. Another thing that we did, we were part of Techstars in 2012, one of the big reasons of why we're based in New York. We shipped our first product 10 months later, 80 cities in the US. A big thank to our networks partner, but we went from 0, and not 0 product, but 0 knowledge. We had no idea what we're doing. We went through the accelerator, and Matt, who just did a talk, was one of our mentors, incredibly smart guy. He walked away when I started my talk, so he probably knows what I'm saying. But it's amazing to ship your product and start to listen to your customers. Think about that USB connector, about those light indicators. You can think about the best product ever made, but you're probably going to release a V2 and a V3, and hopefully a V10 at some point. You cannot make the perfect product. And if you ship the product within a year, in our case, we learned a lot. We learned how people were using the product. We learned about things that people didn't do with the product. We also built our own software, so we designed a lot of things that no one ever used. We built an online dashboard, hired an amazing engineer. We launched it 2 months later. I think maybe a single person, probably me, visited that website, and we just killed it. So listen to what your customers do, track analytics, but again, talk to your customers, and don't be afraid to ship something that isn't perfect. Right? If you're, I think it's a quote from the LinkedIn founder, if you're not ashamed of your first product, you waited too long. Ship stuff. Learn, listen, iterate. Over and over and over again. And we'll do the same thing with this product. I'm already annoyed by the USB connector, and we haven't even started shipping. So I love to do wireless charging now. One of the things that we'll do in V3. Listen and iterate. This is my wife. She's amazing. And this is my then 5-month-old daughter. One of the things that we did is we shipped our first 1,000, 4,000 or something devices from our office 2 blocks away. I think on 368. It's amazing to see and learn all the things that could go wrong when you ship your own hardware. Especially in the early days, I think when we launched on the first day, we sold 700 devices, the next day 20, right? So you can handle 20 devices. At some point you ship a few hundred devices a day, and then it's time to integrate with a partner that goes bankrupt after a few months. But we learned. One of the things that we learned is that if people ship a box, they get stolen. Not the box, but the content. And because we figured that out after a few weeks, that all these devices got stolen, the mailman showed up, and he wrapped this label around the box instead of on top of the box, which sealed the box. No brainer, right? We had no idea. So ever since that day, never a device got stolen. So all these little things you learn when you do something yourself. We know all the pain, we know what to do. And if something goes wrong right now, we can fall back to this process. My daughter is 2 now, so she can probably do it on her own. A lot of things that you do, make sure that you're in full control of what you do, or at least know what you're dealing with. And another really big thing, and we, as Matt again discussed it, don't run out of stock and don't run out of money. Shipping something from 0 to shipping takes way more time than you expect. If you think you can do it in 3 months, like I did, it's going to take 9 months. If it's going to take a year, it's going to take 2 years. So if you're raising money, raise more money than you think. We raised right now 2.2 in a seed round. And we did a scary thing. We asked money for a product. Something in the hardware industry that people tend to do it. In software, people are always afraid to ask money for the product. or at least a lot of people are. And I kind of like asking for something that we spend time and effort and money in. So if you do this, make your own projections. Don't listen to marketing for the projections. They will always oversell. So instead of buying 20,000 devices on day one, you probably have enough to buy 1,000 devices. You need a lot less cash to pre-order 1,000 devices, to manufacture 1,000 devices. So one of the big things that Robert at Karma is working on is making sure that our cash flow is managed, but also the inventory. So we always try to have a minimum amount of devices in inventory, maybe like 1 or 2 weeks, really, really strict, and then order more. If there's a special promotion, 12 weeks lead time. So if we do something in marketing, if there is like a promotion coming up, we need to know 3-4 months ahead. Because we need to anticipate, we need to figure out what to do. And that's not just Karma. That's something that you have to deal with every startup. So try to manage your cash flow by keeping a really strict inventory level. It worked in our case, something that was really helpful. And again, the things that you're selling today is something that you ordered 12 weeks ago. So anticipate on growth, anticipate on promotions. This is the last slide. I encourage everyone to ditch their provider. You don't have to join us, but try to live on Wi-Fi. We don't do a lot of phone calls anymore. I never had a landline. Try to see if you can live on Wi-Fi, even for a week or 2. Turn your phone in flight mode. Surprisingly refreshing. You don't get annoyed by all the notifications if you're not online. But if you're online, you don't need these big companies. You don't need Time Warner. You don't need T-Mobile. You just need Wi-Fi. So while we'll never settle, check out our blog with some more stories. And again, live on Wi-Fi. Ditch the other guys. Thanks.
This is a revolutionary thing going throughout the event from Meryl to this. Tell us about, I guess, the technical aspects. How does the product actually work?
Yeah.
What do you cover as of now in terms of geographic area?
Yeah, so the product, again, is super simple. It's a box that has Wi-Fi. We piggyback on 4G signals from carriers like Sprint, in the future more carriers. And that's it. So I believe that Wi-Fi should be something that travels with you.
So just layman's terms, so you get the Wi-Fi, the connectivity from where initially?
From one of the bigger carriers in the US.
That eventually you will disintermediate?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And they're fine with that? There's, there is no legal limitation to how you can use the bandwidth that they provide to...
Oh, that's an excellent question. So we have agreements with a few carriers, and these are all non-exclusive agreements for like a few years. So what happens is that we go to a carrier and we tell them, hey guys, you have an amazing network but a shitty product. Look at the mobile devices that we just showed. So our pitch towards a carrier, we can sell your data at a premium, we make you richer, and we make our customers happy. So we never want our customers to have to interact with these bigger companies ever again, because they, pardon the language, suck at customer service. So you turn on the device, we search for one of our network partners, and there's a Wi-Fi signal. So think about Karma as your home router, but then it just travels with you. So you never ever have to worry about connectivity. You don't have to go into like a Starbucks with 1,000 people and be frustrated with their slow connection. It just travels with you.
And is there an element, maybe alluded to this, of you sharing the signal from router to router? Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things, we're named Karma not for just because it's a fun name, but if you share your Wi-Fi with strangers, family, co-workers, you get rewarded with free data. That's like the fun gimmick that we build into the product. We started off with this, like we call it social bandwidth. So I travel with my device, 10 of my friends can join my connection, but instead of them using my data, they just bring their own data. We started off with that project. I think it was like somewhat successful. It didn't got the big lift that we anticipated. So now we're putting less and less emphasis on the sharing and more on the personal use case, where we could become your only data connection.
Okay. So you don't put emphasis on the marketing side, but from a product standpoint, there's still that sharing element going on, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work so how do you manage everybody's bandwidth if I have my Karma device in my pocket and everybody here is trying to connect to...
Yeah, great question. So what we do in the hardware itself, we wrote our own firmware. So every time you connect to Matt's Karma or my Karma, we ask you to create a user account, log in, and then we simply track the data usage. So instead of looking at the data pipe, something that is connected to a device, we simply look at the user login. So in a way, data is not tied to a device, not to a network, and not even to a technology, because I believe that those things shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's like 3G, 4G, or 10G in the background. Like internally, we use the Netflix speed. If you can watch a movie on Netflix, good. If you can't watch a movie, bad. That might be like the new light indicators, just a Netflix logo on and off. Not a bad idea.
Great. Any other questions?
So if I can share anyone else's Karma that's in the neighborhood, there is no incentive for me to actually buy this device as such. And if I do buy the device, how much money do you make of the device versus the software?
Last question is the easier question. We make about $40, $50 on the device. So the new device is online for $149. We buy it for anywhere between 92 to 106 based on our purchase order volumes. And we make a margin on the data. Can't disclose the numbers, but more than enough. The idea behind Karma is to, again, put Wi-Fi connectivity somewhere near your body. If millions and millions of people have a Karma device, then everyone is happy and everyone can connect, and the millions of people next to them can also connect. Right now, we're still a tiny startup. We run a nationwide ISP from 8 desks in a co-working space, fueled. It's great to be there, but it's funny how little you need to run a nationwide provider nowadays. So as we scale and as we sell more devices, the need for that device, I think, will only get bigger, because Wi-Fi should be something that's always with you. And there will always be room in between fixed access points. That's also why I don't believe that public Wi-Fi or citywide Wi-Fi will ever work. Like, these hotspots are placed on rooftops or in apartment buildings. And I don't think you'll like me sitting in front of your apartment for 4 hours leeching your Wi-Fi. You much rather get your own Wi-Fi, and that's what we do.
So with 3G and 4G capability becoming very pervasive in all kinds of devices, I'm really curious how you convinced your investors that the world needed another hotspot.
Yeah, that's something that I have to deal with every day. It's a really good question. So the question is, won't all the devices bring their own connectivity? And the simple answer is no. To certify a device or to get access with a device to the data pipe, they need to be certified by a network. Simple calculation, 1.5 million for certification for each and every device. So if you want to connect your home with 4G, probably you need to buy a really fancy apartment to justify the 10 million certification cost. That's a big part of our thesis, is that Wi-Fi is the big solution, but someone needs to both do the hardware, but also the service component. I think that's something that you see in all these hardware startups like Nest and Dropcam. I love these companies. But it's not just the hardware. It's also the service that is tied to the hardware, and that makes a big difference. We're a unsexy mobile hotspot, but we're a really sexy mobile provider. And that's what I sell.
What about security and the thermal heating?
Yeah. So the heating has never been an issue. The device and the processor in the device are small enough to not generate a lot of heat. It gets warm, just like your iPhone. If you use it all the time, you probably place it in your backpack and not like in your front pocket. Security is a big part of our day-to-day routine. So one of the things with public Wi-Fi and Starbucks Wi-Fi is that all these devices are connected to the same network. Without going into technical details, it means that if I have my photo folder shared, like Joe who's drinking his like fancy coffee next to me can see my private photos. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, we separate each individual client device on the network itself or on the device itself. So there's no one-on-one communication possible. And in the future, there are technologies like Hotspot 2.0, terrible name, that will make security even better. And with the fact that we build everything ourselves, my CTO is like scared shitless for some security issues. So everything is super secure. Something that I personally don't worry about too much. And funny enough, like security and privacy for our customers, we just ran the numbers last week. We get about 2% of our customers that complain or ask questions about security. Way less than we anticipated. We had like amazing articles.
One last one. Where's the mic?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, after you.
Could you talk about the battery life on this device? And the other question is, what is the product life cycle? As in, how long this device going to last? And do you have any plans, future plans for upgrading the device?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is about product battery life. Our first product had a battery life of 6 to 8 hours. The second device has a battery life of 5 to 6 hours. So you would think that's not a smart move. But we kept the size the same, put a lot more technology inside. But right now we're making use of a software feature that is called auto sleep. So if you don't use the device, it goes into this hibernation mode. And that will extend the battery life to over 220 hours. And because we talked to our customers, we listened, and we realized that most people use the device plugged into their laptop. Not necessary at all, but it charges the battery. So we're putting a equally sized battery inside that drains more energy for the different components. The battery life is less, but the performance will be way better.
Yeah, definitely it would be greater to reduce my monthly bill on phone. Have you talked about what is the rate right now that I using your device for the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, so the device is $149, and the data that you buy is between $9.90 and $14, which is too expensive to replace Time Warner. But we have a few things. So with the data never expires, it means that if you buy a gigabyte today, it lasts forever. And in the future, these numbers should go down. I think that data shouldn't be more expensive than $1 or $2 per gigabyte. I think it's ridiculous. I think that our prices are ridiculous within this room. I think our prices are too expensive for a gigabyte because it should be way cheaper. At the same time, we need to deliver the connectivity. And if you build a startup, you need to make sure that there's enough cash coming in as well. So the margin that we have on the data is more than enough for us to survive. And for you as an average user, you're probably overpaying your data with about $30 to $40 a month. I think 99% of the audience.
Cool.
What are you paying every month?
So I have an iPod and my tablet that are all connected. I use about 7 gigs a month, which is, we have some bundles, so it's $59 across 4 devices.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much. That was terrific.